Tell me, you're a playwright,
Mm-hmm.
and I just want to know, how did you get into theater, like as a child, and what did that look like when you were younger?
Yeah, I had very little theater experience when I was very young. I played Androcles and the Lion in fifth grade, and that was kind of it. I'd always been writing, wrote a lot of poetry and a lot of fiction, and I was actually teaching math at St. John's High School in Shrewsbury when Pat Dolan, the drama director, said, "Do you want to help out with the theater program?" And I said, "Well, I like going to plays, so why not?" So I started working with him, producing shows and directing, and immediately realized, like, oh, this is what I should be doing. So I focused on theater. All of my writing shifted over from poetry and fiction to writing for the stage, and kind of haven't looked back since. Yeah, I was in the middle of my second year teaching there, and so I signed on and taught again in the third year while I was applying to graduate school, and then went to grad school for theater and playwriting.
And when you were starting to help out with the theater program, was that just plays, or did that involve like musical theater as well?
It was just plays, although we did a piece called Scapino, which was the second piece I directed, I think, in my last year there, that involved a lot of music and also some original music. The other thing that I was doing while I was there, I was in a Worcester punk band, so I was writing music at the same time. And so I have written a couple of pieces that include music, but mostly I write non-musical stuff.
All right, so what really like sparked that switch that was like, I want to make this something that I do for a living, and like make that something, like I want to do what I love. Like what caused that change?
Yeah, it was a couple of things. Part of it was, I know, I remember very distinctly in the middle of my second year teaching math, going to it was then a blackboard with chalk, and starting to write stuff, like first day back after Christmas break, and thinking to myself, I cannot do this for the rest of my life. So I think I was looking for something, and then theater came along, and the collaborative nature of it was so much more interesting to me than, I still loved writing poetry and I loved writing fiction, but it's so solitary. And what I like about playwriting is you have that solitary time to sort of wrestle with your thoughts and feelings, but then you get to move into a collaborative space and work with other artists and get input and feedback, and that's, there's a quote, and I can't remember who originally said it, but a playwright is a poet who got lonely, which I think is great. I mean, that sort of feels exactly right for me. Yeah.
So you talked about how there's like the transition from solitary to a group, like collaborative effort type thing. What is the process of writing a play or making a play look like? Like run me through the steps of how that would work.
I like to think of it in three phases, and the first phase is I'm just writing, like I'm not a believer in the write what you know. I most often write what I don't understand. If there's a question that I have or something I can't figure out, I will try to write my way into an understanding of what's going on in the question. That's certainly true of the play that's happening in Boston at the end of the month. So that first phase for me is really about trying to figure out what is the thing that I haven't understood and how can I come to an understanding of it. And then the collaborative aspect of it starts. And for me, that's working with actors, which is what we're doing now in rehearsal, and trying to get a sense of, is what I've put on paper sensible to these actors? Can they use their tools as artists to move the story forward? Is it clear to them? And then the third phase is what happens at the end of the month when it's up in front of an audience, which is, especially for a piece that's going up for the first time, at the end of it, does the audience take away the same understandings that I came up with as I was investigating?
So you have your most upcoming play, Covenant. Tell me about maybe the process of that and the rehearsals and any like anticipation you have for the show.
It's
coming to Boston?
Yes,
New York
it's going to
City?
be at Boston. It's part of Moonbox Productions' Boston New Works Festival 2024, which is a huge festival. It's 8 plays on 6 stages over 4 days. And there are 4 plays that are getting full productions. Each of them will perform 4 times. And then there are 4 more plays that are getting staged readings. So they're in earlier stages of development. And 2 stage readings for each of those. And folks, if folks are interested, they can go to moonboxproductions.org, and there's information there. So yeah, that's at the very end of the month. It like all of my processes, it started very much like me alone at my desk. I was interested in a certain kind of toxic white male leadership style that I think we, as a nation, have been experiencing and the world has been experiencing. And as I got into that, I started to think about, well, that's really interesting, but what's more interesting to me is the outsider perspective on that kind of leadership. So what it turned into was a play about, sometimes they're called new religious movements, sometimes they're called cults, but it's about an apocalyptic religious community and a federal agent who goes undercover to investigate to find out how dangerous the group is. Do they have weaponry? But then she gets emotionally involved in what's happening and sort of goes rogue on her mission and ends up, things do not go well for her or for the folks in the group as a result of that. So it really became a play about, why do people persist in believing things even when those beliefs get really destructive? So it's an investigation of like what happens when you stop questioning the things that you believe in and just start accepting them at face value.
So would you say that a lot of the plays and shows you make are based off of like real life current events or real life social problems, or would you say it just kind of comes at random?
I think a lot of them are, the part of the write what you know that I do go along with is they almost always have a personal connection. There's something that I'm angry about or puzzled about, or a situation that I'm in or have experienced that I want to understand on a deeper level. So I will dive in that way. They tend not to be, my plays tend not to be super contemporary. They also tend not to be, this play is very dark for me, and my plays tend not to be quite so dark. They're usually dramas, but they have more comedy in them than this play has, which I think kind of reflects like the fairly dark times that we're living in, I guess. So there's usually, again, a personal connection, but it's like something that I want to understand more deeply, or a character or a situation that I observe puzzles me and I want to like dig at it.
So you mentioned that your plays are usually a comedy, or like have more comedy than this one coming. What about, like, do you think that plays and shows, musicals, whatever, even if you haven't created it, is that like a good tool to bring people together and like analyze like a situation, an idea, philosophy? Does it like help bring everyone together?
I think so. I think that's the thing that's amazing about live theater, is that everybody is in the same space with the actors, experiencing the same thing together, and I think that it may not have the immediate like, oh my God, that play changed my life kind of thing, but I think it has an influence on the way that people think and interact. I think we as creatures are meant to be in community together and experiencing things together, and I think one of the problems in the modern world is that we've become so isolated, and we interact with our screens rather than with other people, and so that communal experience of being in a shared space is powerful, I think, or can be powerful. And it can be really uplifting, it can be enjoyable, but it's great when a whole group of people get to confront the same questions together, I think.
And do you think that theater is getting enough representation in media, like the media landscape? I know everything's dominated by technology, which can obviously be a struggle, but do you think that like even plays on film, just plays in general, are they like getting enough attention that they deserve?
It's really interesting. I know it's a question that the answer to it has changed a lot over the past 5 years because of COVID and because of isolation and the impossibility of being together. But what seems to be the case in the last year or so is, like, I volunteer at Vokes Theatre in Wayland, and their audiences have grown again. So people seem to be interested in having that experience together and valuing what theater does that those other forms don't do. Whether there's enough representation, I don't know. The other side of that coin is that there are so many theaters that are closing because, not for all theaters, it's not true for all theaters that audiences are fully back. So there are financial struggles. In the new play sector, there are so many places that playwrights used to be able to go and get opportunities to develop their work, and a lot of those are downsizing. There's a festival that I was part of in 2019 where there were 20 playwrights invited. I just saw their roster for this year and there were 10. So it's a smaller program. There are residencies for writers to go and work on stuff that have closed. So that's scary and frustrating. But the question then becomes like, so what's going to emerge instead? And maybe theater isn't going to get the attention that it got maybe 5 or 6 years ago, but maybe there'll be a groundswell of more sort of grassroots stuff happening.
Do you think there could be like an upcoming like theater renaissance of? I know you mentioned how people are starting to come back to the Volkstheater.
Yeah.
It's kind of a situation where it's like grass is greener on the other side. Like when technology was new, people were like, "Oh my God, I love it," and then they realized they didn't have that personal connection that they did before, so they're bouncing back. Like, do you think that's something that could become a growing industry again?
Wow, that's a great question. I hope so. Especially for somebody who is much more, I just slapped my microphone.
Oh, it's okay, don't worry.
Somebody who is more interested in the communal experience of writing for a live theater rather than writing for film or TV or video. I hope that people will get tired of being isolated and will seek out those communal experiences. And I think on some level, like what were the big cultural events in America over the last couple of years that like created the biggest cultural splash would have to be, say, Taylor Swift and Beyonce, a live performance. Like, so I think there is this desire that people have to come together on large scale to have mass artistic experiences that'll nourish them and refresh them. So hopefully that will happen in theater too. I mean, it's very exciting that Moonbox has moved so many artists and resources and time and effort into creating this huge festival of 8 shows, especially when it's getting more and more difficult for new work to get out there. It's great that there's a company that recognizes like we need to foster this work and we need to find ways to bring new plays forward and tell new stories and engage new audiences.
And where will this festival be held?
It's going to be at the Boston Center for the Arts and Calderwood Pavilion, which are spaces that are connected. They're all part of the BCA. The Huntington Theater sort of, I think, owns the Calderwood space. So the 4 plays that are getting productions, one of them is going to be in the Wimberley, which is the big space. Once Upon a Carnival is the name of the show. In the Robert Studio Theater, also at the Calderwood, is Knockdown Dragout. And then next door at the BCA in the Plaza Theater is Covenant, and then the Black Box Theater is Holy Chicken Sandwich. And then the readings are going to take place in the Calderwood in 2 of the halls that are sometimes used for rehearsals and sometimes performances. So it's really taking over the whole complex for that weekend of June 20th to 23rd.
And then do you have anything planned for after Covenant? Do you have other plays in the back burner that will be coming out soon?
I do. I just finished, this past weekend I was in New York with industry readings of a full-length play called Queen of Sad Mischance. And who knows whether anybody came to those readings and is going to be interested in doing what they can to move the play forward. So that something may happen with that. And then I have a full-length play in earlier stages of development called Renovation. That's part of, it's a play about sort of what happens in American immigrant families 2 and 3 generations down the line when there's been this drive in the immigrant family to come to America, but when assimilation happens, like what's the balance between being assimilated and holding onto your culture and that sort of thing. And it's set in Beverly, where I grew up. So that is getting a digital workshop in July into early August. So it's a program called the Digital Development Program, and there are 4 plays involved in that. 3 of them will be getting digital readings and rehearsals. Mine will be a little bit more elaborate. It's a digital workshop, so it'll have a bunch of rehearsals with time to rewrite in between, and then a public but online performance at the end. There's another play. I wrote a solo adaptation of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow that's going to be done in Colorado. So there are a few things bubbling along. And then there are a couple of theaters that have expressed interest in Covenant. And we'll see if that goes anywhere. It's always hard to know if somebody says, "Oh, we're very excited about your play," and then sometimes something happens and sometimes nothing does.
I mean, that is an interesting concept, like to think about, like a cult. I've never seen a cult on the stage before.
Yeah. And again, it's interesting because my writing tends not to be as dark as this play is. The Bridget O'Leary, who's running the New Works Festival and who dramaturged this play, so she's been the person who's been there looking at the script and asking me questions about the script to help with revision, as she did for Queen of Sad Mischance a few years ago. And she keeps saying, like, she thinks that I'm a darker playwright than I tend to think of myself, because she says, look at the plays that are working and look at the plays that people are engaging with. So that's an interesting that's an interesting thought. So yeah, I've never put a cult on stage before. But again, it felt like a response to what I was seeing happening in the world, and something that I wanted to try to understand, like why are people so unquestioning in their belief even when those beliefs turn into destruction.
Yeah, do you think that's like a trend in audiences recently, but of, you know, enjoying like the more darker, crimey stuff? Because, you know, you look at even podcasts now, people are listening to so much true crime and all that stuff. There's Netflix documentaries on all that. So I think this will do well, and
I think
audiences will like it.
I think that's true. I think there is an interest in it. And it's weird for me because I also think people love going to the theater to have a great time. And the last play that I had performed in the area was at Gloucester Stage last fall, and it was very much like go to the theater and have a really good time kind of play. It was very comic. It was about Gloucester legends and lore as part of the 400 plus celebration for the town of Gloucester. So it was investigating the history and some dark stuff in the history, but it took a comic approach to all of it. So I don't know, you know, it's that balance of, will people want to go see the more comic plays that are in this festival, or will they be drawn to this piece that's really dark? I don't know, curious.
Well, I'm excited, and I hope that audiences love it. I know I will probably go and watch it if I get the chance to.
Oh yeah, great.
June 23rd?
June 21st, 22nd, 23rd. The 21st, our performance is at 8 o'clock. On the 22nd, the Saturday, our performance is at 6. And then on Sunday, there's a 2 o'clock matinee and a 7 o'clock evening show. If folks are interested in getting tickets, as I said, they can go to moonboxproductions.org. They can also go to bostontheaterscene.com, which handles all the ticket sales. Tickets are $25 each, with a portion of ticket sales going to the Theater Community Benevolent Fund. Moonbox always partners with an organization for all of their shows. Sometimes it's related to the content of the show, but in this case, it's because there's 8 different shows, it's hard to do that. So it's the Theater Community Benevolent Fund helps to support theater artists in the region who are fallen on hard times.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in.
Sure.